I am a paediatric nurse, mum of two, and author of A Life, a Finger, a Pee Up a Nose, a practical guide to baby and child first aid. And it is absolutely delightful to be here with you today. We are going to be talking about falls in babies and toddlers. As a paediatric nurse, my career was spent majority in the emergency department before starting CPR kids. And I can honestly say that we would see injuries from falls every single day. And what we do know is that when it comes to kids in Australia, over 60,000 children are actually hospitalised every year due to injuries, and falls is the number one cause of this. And so that's why it's really important to know not only how to prevent falls but also what to do when things happen, because you know what, we need to let our kids get out there and explore the world. We need to let them climb trees. We need to let them get out into nature and become resilient adults. We have to do that. We can't wrap them up in cotton wool, but we do need to know how to patch them up afterwards. And so that's an important thing. What I don't want you to think is, oh no, I have to wrap my child up in cotton wool, I can't let them go out and do anything. Please don't think that. We need to let them developmentally get out there and explore the world. But of course, we need to minimize risks that can badly hurt them. Of course, it's about that balance. And isn't that the hardest thing with parenting, is actually finding that balance? It's near impossible, isn't it? But we can't do our kids a disservice. They've got to get out there into nature and explore the world. So before we go any further, can I get you just to tag anyone in the comments below who you think will benefit from knowing this information to help their kids? That would be fantastic. Anyone who's looking after your kids as well. And give me a wave or a thumbs up just to make sure that you can hear and see me well. That would be fantastic. And remember, we'll post this to the CPR Kids page as well as soon as we're done. So you can come back to the CPR Kids Facebook page and watch it anytime as well. So when we talk about falls, the three top things that children fall off. Number one is playground equipment, but we're not going to stop our kids going on playground equipment. It's really important that they do get on there. I've had one child who has fallen and broken her arm off the monkey bars as well. So our family certainly has not been immune as well. The second thing is, often they will actually fall from the same level that they're at. So it's falling from a standing height. When you think about little ones who are starting to cruise, who are starting to toddle around, of course they're going to fall over. Absolutely they are. When they start to get a little bit more adventurous and start climbing up on things like the bookshelf, that's one thing. A lot of you out there, I can hear you going, yep, I've got a climber. I've got a climber and I cannot keep them off anything. That's when we need to make sure that the bookshelves and everything are actually screwed to the wall. We should be doing that for all kids because it is a risk to pull down on top, but particularly if you have a climber. And the other thing that kids fall off are wheels, meaning devices with wheels. So things like skateboards, scooters, roller skates. My 10-year-old got some rollerblades the other day, and she has been rollerblading around and she is way too confident. So yeah, she's going to end up with a big stack, but I have all of the safety equipment on her, which is a good thing. And of course, when it comes to babies, chairs and high chairs are often what they fall off, change tables and beds. So the little ones are not immune to falls as well. So we're going to go through some prevention techniques for falls, and then I'll talk about what to do if they do fall. So for example, the head injuries, and also if they end up with any bumps, scrapes, things like that. Okay, so let's start with the babies. What's really, really important is that we always have them strapped in to whatever they're in. And I made a big mistake with my first child, and this is kind of like confession here, isn't it? So I made a big mistake. She wasn't sleeping very well at all when she was about 6 months old. I wasn't sleeping either. And I know that babies need to be strapped in every single time they go into their pram. I know that. I'm an emergency nurse, of course I know that. But she hadn't been sleeping, I hadn't been sleeping. She had finally fallen asleep in the car. And so I took her out. We'd arrived at our destination, and I popped her in the pram, and I wanted to be really quick to pull the hood of the pram cover down because I was so desperate that she did not wake up. And my husband said to me, he's gone, "Oh, you better click her straps on. Make sure you, before she, do it, I think gently or something like that so she doesn't wake up." And I was like, "I know." And so for some reason, I turned around to do something. I forgot. I completely forgot to strap her into her pram. So she's laying down. It was a stroller, laying down. And we were walking around this path, and then all of a sudden she's woken up and she's just rolled straight over and rolled out of the pram onto the concrete, hitting her head. She screamed straight away. I, of course, was hysterical because I'd hurt my baby. It was my fault, which it was. But I was just sleep deprived. I wasn't thinking, and I forgot to strap her in. Mind you, never forgot again. I made sure every single time that her 5-point harness was on, because that's the problem. Often we'll just strap them in across their waist and not worry about those parts. But trust me, children are Houdinis. Babies and toddlers will absolutely wriggle out of those. They'll push their legs up and they will go over and out of the pram. So please always use a 5-point harness and just check it, just double check. Because like me, in my bleary-eyed state, she fell out and hit her head. She ended up with a nice big egg on her head, but she was okay, which is good. And the same goes with high chairs as well. Just be aware that high chairs with a 5-point restraint are needed, not just the bits that go across the tummy, because trust me, they are Houdinis and they will wiggle out. And that's a significant fall from a high chair for a baby, really, when you consider that that is probably more than double their height to fall out of a chair. It's not significant for us perhaps, but for a baby it really is. And that also goes for change tables as well. You are always keeping a hand on top of your baby whilst you are changing them. You are never a hand off unless they are fully strapped on. And certainly you may prefer, and you may not, you might need to have that higher change table because you've got a sore back or you've just had a seizure. You can't get down onto the floor. Completely understand that. But if you're able to and you prefer, you may want to actually change your baby on the floor because then they can't go anywhere, and it eliminates that risk. So there are a few things. There are 2 more things as well just before we move off prevention with babies, and that is baby walkers. Baby walkers have been banned in many countries for a good reason. So what I mean by baby walkers, they are the kind of round things that you then sit your baby in, and they're on wheels, and they kind of go on their tippy toes and scoot around all over the place. It gives them mobility and often activity as well. But there are a few problems. First of all, being on their tippy toes isn't a good idea for their development, scooting around like that. But they can get from point A to point B in a flash like this. I have certainly read a lot of scholarly articles on, I certainly didn't say that word correctly then. Oh dear. And I'm not sleep deprived. But anyway, so some really good journal articles that have talked about incidences where children have actually babies have gotten themselves to the top of stairs and have managed to go downstairs in these walkers and been seriously injured. So not only is it not good for their physical development, but they can actually have falls very easily and just in the blink of an eye get from one place to another. So that's why it's really important that we're not using baby walkers with little ones. And of course as well, having bouncers on tables. So I had a great bouncer for my little ones when they were little, strapped them in. Fantastic. They loved it. They'd be bouncing away in there. But it's really important that we don't put it up on a table. So it could be tempting. You might be in the kitchen and you're making dinner and they're up on the table. But as they bounce, what can happen is that can actually move. You may not notice that it's moved to the edge of the table. It's no longer stable. One more bounce and over it goes. So it's really important not to use these things. They're designed to be on the floor, not to be on a table. So that's some stuff about preventing falls in babies. What about the toddlers and the bit older kids? Bit older kids. My goodness, what is wrong with my speech today? So one thing that I learned when I was a nurse, there was a nurse called Glenda who I worked with, and she was the oracle of all, she still is the oracle of all things. She's absolutely amazing. And I remember when my first baby was born, and she said to me, she's gone, decommission the coffee table, Sarah. And I remember going, what? She's gone, the coffee table, get rid of it until she's older. And I went, okay. And so what Glenda would always recommend is that little ones who start cruising around, they pull themselves up. And then one of the things that she noticed as an emergency department nurse practitioner was that kids were forever hitting their heads and splitting the skin open on the coffee table. So if you can't move your coffee table over to the side for the time being, and you've got to keep it there, at least on the edges, put some things to help make that a softer blow as they do that, because coffee tables are one of the most common things that they are falling and hitting their heads on. So that's one of them. Also think about, as they're cruising, if you've got big rugs around as well that they can easily trip and fall on, and other things too, thinking about, funnily enough, bunk beds. Now, we need to remember that bunk beds, they're lovely, they look great, but they shouldn't be used. It's recommended by KidSafe under the age of 9, and ideally 9-year-old and above can be in a bunk bed, but ideally definitely not before the age of 6. So thinking about those sorts of things, and also when transitioning from a cot to a bed as well, thinking about, we don't want a bed that's really high up, because remember, a really high bed, then that can actually certainly be a significant fall for a little one. We want to keep those beds nice and low to the ground, or and making sure that we've got those sides and so on if needed. Otherwise, a mattress on the ground is fantastic as well. So have a think about those sorts of things. I had one child in a normal bed and we just put the rail things up, and my other child, she was in a low bed, so we never bothered. If she fell out, it wasn't that far to fall. So it's really what's best for you and your family with that, but being aware of that as well. And also thinking about things that sometimes you think, they're a toddler. Sorry, that's quite funny. My baby Annie just fell off the shelf that she was sitting in next to me. I just used her to demonstrate a CPR class, and she's just fallen off the shelf. How appropriate, seeing as we're talking about falls. But anyway, one thing that we often think of with toddlers is that they might not need the same safety equipment that we would make our 5, 6, 7-year-old wear when it comes to being on scooters. I have seen 18-month-old kids on scooters with no helmet and no safety equipment flying down paths in parks and things like that. Make it a rule in your house from the very, very, very beginning that if wheels are involved, helmet and safety equipment on. No helmet, no wheels. That's simple. No helmet, no wheels. It's not negotiable, because often people think, oh, a toddler on a scooter, no, they're not going to get fast enough. It's not about fast. They can have a hip injury just from falling off, but of course the greater speed they have, the more likely that injury is going to be more serious. So please, 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 even if your toddler is under 2, please put a helmet on them. It's really, really important. I see it all the time. They can still get really hurt. No helmet, no wheels. And the other thing that we get asked before we go on to treatment, one more thing, is trampoline safety. We often get asked questions about whether trampolines are appropriate for children. I love trampolines. I think they're fantastic when they are used properly. There are concerns about trampolines, particularly my daughter broke her ankle on a trampoline, but she was doing the wrong thing. We have rules around the trampoline, no double bouncing, one person in there at once, all that kind of stuff. And it's important that, certainly being aware, as if you are a grown-up on a trampoline bouncing with a child, it's probably going to end up, in some problems. but you can do it safely. And so what I want you to do is go to the Kids Safe website, their trampoline safety, and I will pop that in the comments below as well. I certainly didn't decommission the trampoline after my daughter broke her ankle. They love the trampoline. She was back out there. It's great for fitness. I think they're brilliant, but it's just about jumping on them safely. There's just got to be some rules around it. Okay, so let's talk about what to do if something does happen. Now, if your child has a head injury, so they have fallen, there's a couple of things that may happen. Number one, they may end up with a nice big egg or a swelling on their head, or they may have split the skin from the impact. If they have split the skin and they've got a nice laceration there, for a full 5 minutes, something clean and dry, a cloth or their jacket or whatever it is that you've got, firmly, so over the site, so firm, direct pressure over the top of the wound for a minimum of 5 minutes. Then take it off and have a look. If it's gaping, if you can see fat, if you can see muscle, if you can see skull. Here, here, and here are the main points of injury. They tend to be the points of impact. Then what you're doing is looking at that after the pressure. Have a look. If it's gaping, any of those other things that I mentioned, if you look at it and go, oh, or if it's still profusely bleeding, more pressure, then you need to go to either your nearest emergency department, or if you've got a GP who does, stitches and things like that, or glue, then take them and get them looked at, please. If you take that off and you have a look and the edges have come together really nicely, it's quite small, and you go, oh, actually that's all right, fantastic, good. Trust me, you will know. So that's the important thing. If it's that squishy egg there, then what we want to have a look at is, how does it feel? It should be reasonably firm to touch, like a hard-boiled egg. If it is squishy, okay, so it feels like an avocado that's ready for guacamole, okay, that can be quite concerning. It can mean there's a lot of bleeding or potentially a little fracture under there maybe. Remember, you don't have x-ray eyes, you don't know what's going on. If it is squishy, so what we call a boggy swelling, like an avocado ready for guacamole, you need to go to the emergency department, your nearest emergency department. And of course, we're looking for other things as well with head injury. So have they had a seizure or a loss of consciousness, even a brief loss of consciousness? We're calling 000 ambulance. So if they've had a seizure or a brief loss of consciousness, we absolutely need an emergency medical help. Okay, so we expect them to cry immediately after banging their head. If they, and we expect them just after a cuddle and, to get straight back into what they're doing. If their behaviour is odd, that's not normal for them. If you find that they're really sleepy and it's not their normal sleep time. If you find that they have a vomit, and I don't mean a vomit because they're upset and crying, I mean they've had a vomit because, of a head injury, then you need medical help, okay? And I want you to trust your gut. If you think that there is something wrong, take your child to get reviewed by a doctor. I think that's a really important thing. And remember, keep looking out for these signs up to 48 hours after a head injury as well. So what do we expect? We expect them to have maybe a bit of bruise or a bump, to cry, and then feel better, and then get straight back and be behaving perfectly normal. Any of those other symptoms, of course, when needing a medical review. It's really, really important. And I'll put a fact sheet, what to look out for, in the comments below as well, so that you've got that there. And of course, grazes from coming off things are really, really common. We need to clean them. So the best way to do that is often to pop your child into a nice warm bath. I know getting them in there can sometimes be a bit tricky, and very, very gently just soaking the wound and just giving it a clean. Ideally, we need to get the big bits of, maybe asphalt or dirt or whatever it is out. Gently wiping it with a very soft face washer can often help after it's been soaking in the bath for a while. Get it clean, and then applying a non-stick dressing is important as well. So those sorts of things. But if it's really a dirty wound and you can't get it clean, then it's off to the GP for them to have a look at. Okay, but we're not going to scrub it or do anything really nasty like that, because that can be really, really painful. But we do, in the same token, we do need to try and get it as clean as possible. Okay, everyone. Well, are there any questions at all about what we have just covered about the falls and prevention and treatment? Remember, this is just a summary. There's lots more to it, and that's why you need to do a first aid course, a pediatric one. We've got our e-learning, our online course up and available on our website, and of course, as soon as we can, we will be running our classes. As you know, as soon as we're allowed to have groups, we will be running our classes again in the public. So book in now for the coming months ahead, because everybody needs these life-saving skills. So anyway, have a fantastic day, everyone, and please put in the comments below what you would like us to bring to you on our next live. Okay, see you later, everyone. Bye-bye.